Two gods once fought over a single gray rock, not with thunderbolts, but with gifts. One raised a whole roaring sea, the other planted a tree, and the tree won. This is the myth of how the greatest city of the ancient world got its name, decided by a strange contest. It is not a story of war, but of a choice. The wars for heaven were over, the titans chained, the giants buried, chaos sealed beneath the burning mountain. And the gods, secure on their thrones, turned their eyes down to the world of mortals. For a god is only as great as the hearts that worship him. Across the young world, cities were rising, each one a prize, and the gods began to choose their own. In Attica lay one small kingdom, a poor rocky spur of sea-washed stone, thin of soil, ringed by water, humble and gray, and about to become the most fought-over rock in the world. Its king was strange and ancient, Cecrops, born from the soil itself, a man above the waist, a coiling serpent below, the first king of a people who called themselves children of the earth. But this small kingdom caught the eyes of two gods at once, and neither would give way to the other. Both looked down on Cecrops's gray rock, and both said, "This one is mine." One was Poseidon, lord of the sea, the earth shaker, elder and mightier. His trident could crack mountains and raise the whole ocean in a towering wall of water. The other was Athena, gray-eyed goddess of wisdom, of craft, and of war fought with the mind. Zeus's own daughter, born full-grown and armored from the crown of his skull. Both claimed Attica. Both would have its people for their own. Neither god would give way to the other, and neither would share. And so the first great contest of the new age was set. Not a battle, but a wager of gifts. Each god would give one gift. The greater would win the city. Poseidon struck first. He climbed the gray rock of the citadel and stood at its highest point above the whole small kingdom and raised his great three-pronged trident high over his head. And he drove it down into the living stone. The rock split with a crack like the breaking of the sky, and the whole hill shuddered beneath the blow of the earth shaker. And where the trident struck, the sea came leaping up, salt water roaring out of the rock, the whole power of the ocean called up onto the top of a dry hill. The people of Attica stared in awe. They had never seen the like. The ocean itself brought up onto their mountain. They were amazed and they were afraid. Some tell it stranger still that no spring rose at all, but a horse, the first war horse in the world, leaping swift and terrible from the wounded stone, the sea god's gift of speed in battle. Whichever it was, Poseidon's promise was the same: power, ships without end, empire, dominion of the waves, a city that would rule the sea and grow mighty and feared upon the water. It was a wonder to behold, but there was a flaw in the gift no eye could miss for long. The water was salt, bright, and roaring, and utterly useless, a marvel that no one could drink. Then Athena came. She did not split the earth or raise the sea or loose a wild thing from the stone. She came quietly and knelt on the bare rock beside the roaring spring. First she called the serpent king to her side. "Cecrops," she said, "witness this, so all may know I planted my gift with my own hand and gave it first." And into a crack in the stone she set one small thing. Not a wave, not a beast, a slip of gray-green wood, a single seed, pressed gently into the rock with the tip of her spear. And out of the bare rock grew a tree. Silver leaves unfurled and turned in the wind. Among them ripened small, hard fruit, dark and gleaming, the first olive tree in all the world. It was no roaring wonder. Beside the towering sea, it looked almost like nothing at all. But this was the tree that gave, and there was almost nothing it did not give. Oil to burn in the lamp, oil to cook with, to heal wounds, to anoint the brows of kings. From this one tree came the very light of a household. Fruit to eat, wood to build the house and to warm the hearth. From one small, unshowy tree, a whole way of living. And more than that, The green branch a suppliant holds out when he begs for peace, and the crown of leaves set upon the head of the victor. The olive was food and warmth, but also peace and glory. Where Poseidon offered awe, Athena offered use, not power over the world, but the means to build a good life within it, not conquest, but civilization. And so the two gifts stood side by side, the roaring salt sea and the quiet silver tree. Power or wisdom? Now someone had to choose, and a city's soul hung on the answer. The obvious judge was Zeus, king of the gods, but Zeus would not do it. For the two rivals were his own brother and his own daughter, and he would not set his hand for either against the other. Instead, he set others to decide. He summoned the 12 great gods of Olympus and seated them as a court to weigh the two gifts and to render a verdict no single god could be blamed for. And the 12 weighed the salt sea against the silver tree, the dominion of the ocean against the quiet promise of the olive, might against use. They looked long at both, and then they gave their verdict. The land was Athena's. For Cecrops testified before them all that she had planted her gift first, and the tribunal ruled that the olive was the greater. The sea was power, but the olive was civilization itself. Think on that. The mightier god offered the greater power and lost, because the gods themselves judged that wisdom and use and the settled life of a built world were worth more than the raw dominion of the sea. But others tell the choosing very differently and far stranger. They say it was not the gods who judged at all. They say Cecrops put the question to his people and let the citizens themselves vote. And when the people were counted, the vote fell along a strange and telling line. Every man of Attica voted for Poseidon and the sea, and every woman voted for Athena and the tree. And because there was one more woman in the crowd than there were men, the women carried it by a single vote. Wisdom won Athens by one, and the men of the city would not forget it. But whichever way it was decided by the gods or by the people, the ending was the same. The land belonged to Athena, and the gray-eyed goddess gave it her own name. From that day, the rock and its people were called Athens, after Athena, goddess and city bound into a single name, the patron and her people forever inseparable. The wisest of the gods had won the city of the mind, but Poseidon did not lose gracefully. The elder god, the mightier god, the lord of the sea, refused, and beaten by a tree, filled with a towering vindictive rage, he struck the ground with his trident and called up the ocean he ruled. And the gray sea rose and rolled in over the low country. The whole Thriasian plain drowned beneath salt water. The sea god's fury made flood. And in the darker telling, the version where the women's votes had won the day, the sea god's anger fell hardest of all upon them. For their vote, they said, was why he had lost, and someone would pay for it. To appease Poseidon and turn back the sea, the men of Athens punished their women threefold, and it was a bitter price for the gift of victory. They should never cast a vote again. Their children should no longer bear their mothers' names, but only their fathers, and they should no longer be called Athenians at all. The women who won the city were written out of it. So the city of wisdom told itself why its women had no voice, and founded part of its glory on a silencing. It is a hard story, and in honesty, this darkest version reaches us through Roman hands, not the Athenians' own. But Athens did keep its women without a vote for 1,000 years, and it remembered this myth as the reason. The story was more than a story. It was how a city explained an old injustice to itself. And yet the sea god was not cast out of the city he lost. In time, the flood drew back, and Athens made its peace with Poseidon and chose wisely to honor him too. So the two old rivals came to share a single sacred house upon the rock. The goddess who won and the god who lost, worshipped side by side forever. For the loser of a contest of gods is never truly banished. Poseidon would still shake the Athenian earth when his mood turned dark. But the city gave him his honors and kept the sea god close, and in that peace between wisdom and power, the city would flourish. and the tokens of that first strange morning stayed exactly where the gods had left them, not in story only, but in stone, for any Athenian to walk up and touch. Deep in the shrine on the rock lay the salt well of Poseidon, a pool of seawater welling far from any shore, the sea god's own token kept for all to see. And they swore that whenever the south wind blew, you could hear it, the faint sound of waves, murmuring up out of the stone far from any sea. And in the naked rock beside it, 3 long grooves were gouged deep, the marks of the trident where the sea god struck. The Athenians showed them to visitors for centuries as proof the whole thing was true. And growing on the rock above them all, the sacred olive of the goddess, the mother of every olive tree in Attica, and the living heart of the city. As long as it grew green, the Athenians believed, so would they. And once, that belief was tested to the breaking point. When the Persians stormed Greece and burned the Acropolis to the ground, the sacred olive burned with everything else. It was reduced to a black and broken stump. It seemed the very soul of the city had been put to the fire. But the very next day, when the Athenians came up through the ruins to grieve, they found something at the blackened stump. A single new shoot, a hand's breadth of living green wood, had already risen from the ash overnight. The city read it as a sign from the goddess herself. The tree could be burned but not killed, and neither could Athens. Wisdom's gift, like wisdom, would always grow back. And at the height of their glory, the Athenians carved the whole contest into marble. Across the western front of the Parthenon, the temple crowning the rock, Athena and Poseidon, the tree and the sea, frozen at the very moment of the strife, for all time. So the city of the olive remembered its founding, not as a war it won, but as a gift it was given, and a choice it made. And that, in the end, is what the contest truly was. A civilization choosing what it would value most. Between the roaring sea and the quiet tree. Between power that overwhelms and wisdom that builds. Between awe and use. Athens chose the olive. It chose the mind. And for that choice, it became the city of philosophers and poets, of playwrights and lawgivers, and the birthplace of democracy itself. The mightier god had offered the greater power, but the wiser goddess offered the greater life. And this was the pattern of the whole new age. Gods and mortals were bound now not by war, but by worship. Every city its patron, every people its god. The contest for Athens was the first of them, and the model for them all. The god who gives the better gift wins the human heart. The wars for heaven were over. Now the gods walked among cities and mortals, giving gifts, demanding worship, and reaching down into human lives. And the great story of Greek myth came, at last, down from the clouds to the earth. On a gray rock above the sea, a goddess planted a tree and a city took her name. That was the beginning of it all. And the great story goes on, of mortals who reach toward the gods, of gifts that bless and gifts that curse, and of the wonders and the ruin that come when the two worlds touch. Thank you for watching. If this tale stayed with you, subscribe. A new myth arrives every week, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, may the old stories keep their hold on you.